Day 9 begins with Kazue Shina, who was going to the convenience store and ran into two girls fleeing from a thief. He defended them, but the assailant him and he away. After that, when he opens his eyes, he does so inside the body of a child. He is reincarnated into another person. He sees himself so small in the mirror, but his maid Sylvia and his mother tell him that he is confused because he was unconscious for a week, although he knows the truth. Later, when Sylvia brings him food, he manages to get information from her. He is now Kane and he is 3 years old. His father is Garm, his mother is Sarah, and he has a sister named Vereen. And not only that, Sarah is Garm's second wife. The first is called Maria, and she and Garm have 2 children, Jin and Alec. In addition, his father Garm is a high-ranking noble. Together with his army, they protect the edges of the kingdom of Esfort from invaders, and they guard the monster forest together with the adventurers. This fills Kazuya with joy, since in his old life he lived alone and his last relative recently. So he decides to live this new life as Kane and learn to use magic. His parents quickly notice that he is very intelligent for his age, and Garm encourages him to follow his own path since he cannot inherit him the estate, but must first wait until he turns 5 and is baptized. Although Kane couldn't wait and began to secretly practice magic on his own, managing to produce fire with his hands. Soon he is discovered by Reen, who offers to start teaching him about the kingdom of Esfort. She teaches him about Yuya, the first king of Esfort, who was first an adventurer, and also teaches him that in the kingdom there are elves, dwarves, and beast folk. 2 years later, Kane is ready to be baptized, and while they are riding in the carriage, his family explains to him that magic and protection are measured in levels from 1 to 5, depending on the natural ability of the person who possesses it. These are granted thanks to the faith of Marineford, which is practiced in this kingdom and is dedicated to worshipping the 7 pillar gods. Kane and his family enter the church, and the priest begins Kane's baptism ceremony. But a light begins to shine from one of the gods, and now Kane is in front of the 7 gods, who know that he is Shina Kazuya. Then Zeno, the god of creation and creator of this world, asks Ryan to explain why he was reincarnated. She is the god who governs and the cycle of rebirth. Rhyme says that his was unnecessary, but since he did a good deed, the earth god asked her to reincarnate him into this world for a second chance. Kane thanks her for everything as he has come to enjoy his new family and is excited to be able to control magic. Then Reno, god of magic, tells him that she knows that he has been practicing magic and gives him her protection. Zeman agrees and also gives him protection. After that, Sarnos, god of also gives him protection and advises him to work on sword skills or martial arts. Then Grim, god of technology, also grants him protection, as does Panem, god of commerce. With his protection, he will be able to use judgment and item box. Finally, Belug, god of earth, also gives him protection, a unique one. When Kane opens his eyes, the priest says that he has never seen the 7 god pillars shine so brightly, and his father asks him to show him his status. But Kane knows that he must first see it alone, so he runs to hide. Alone, Kane checks his status and almost when he sees that the 7 gods have given him their level 10 protection, something absurd considering that the maximum level is 5, so he decides to hide it to make it seem less. Later at dinner, Kane shows his diminished status to his family, but he forgets to hide the amount of magic he possesses, almost 40,000, and the powerful mages of the palace have only 10,000. Garm immediately worries that if anyone finds out about this, they might believe that he is defying the kingdom, so he advises him not to show it to anyone. At night, Kane finds a magic book in his bed and wonders if he can summon something fluffy, but he ends up summoning a monster, which attacks Reen and her friend. Kane tries to stop it and manages to undo the invocation, but he thinking that the same thing will happen as last time. When he wakes up, he is happy to have saved the girls, thus deciding what he wants to do in the future. The next day at his debut, Kane announces that he will be an adventurer. Kane's father supports his decision and decides to get him tutors to train him. The next day, the adventurers arrive. They are Master Millie and Master Nana. Kane is so excited that he falls out of the window onto Millie. Millie will teach him sword skills and Nina magic. The problem is that Kane is gifted and the starter training is unnecessary, so he asks them to train him outside. Later, with his father's permission, the girls take Kane away from the palace to train him at the intermediate level, but Kane is at a higher level than that. Suddenly, a rabbit appears and tries to attack them, but Kane defeats it with stone bullets and keeps it in his item box. After that, Nina shows him how to detect more prey, and Kane quickly spots 4 more rabbits. They defeat them easily, but one escapes to the monster forest, and the adventurers tell him that every few years, the monsters come out of the forest and attack the kingdom. At night, Kane checks his status and is surprised to see that he has increased many levels and fears that if people find out, they will want to eliminate him. The next day, Millie and Nina take Kane to the guild to look for information about monsters that are easy to defeat, and Kane meets Rudy, The receptionist, she tells them about some wolves, but they are interrupted by some rude adventurers. They make fun of the girls, but Cain does not plan to allow it and beats them up despite being only 5 years old, since he has studied martial arts since he learned to read. Cain's tutors thank him for defending them and take him to train. 3 years later, Millie and Mina's last day is approaching and Cain wants to give them a gift in gratitude, so he goes to the monster forest and defeats an ogre and an earth dragon without breaking a sweat to turn them into magic bags. The problem is that their fight alerted the Watchers and they thought that the monsters were about to attack the kingdom. So with Garm at the head, an army rode to the forest, but they only found Cain's handkerchief. The next day, Cain thanks his tutors for teaching him about the value of friendship and gives them the magic bags, telling them that he made them with magic and they can store up to a mansion inside them, which leaves them completely surprised. Before saying goodbye, they kiss him on the cheek. And it is his turn to be surprised. 2 years later, Cain and his family are going to the royal capital for Cain's debut, since every nobleman must do so at the age of 10. They are also taking Reen to school in the capital because she is 12 years old. Suddenly, Cain uses his tracking magic and realizes that 3 kilometers away there is a fight and the monsters are too many, so he uses his powers to give himself a speed boost and arrives at the scene of the fight in seconds. Cain quickly uses his air and his sword to combat the orcs, leaving the men defending the important carriage speechless. When it's all over, Cain heals the knights and his father is once again surprised by his son's abilities, but all that is forgotten when Garm sees the Duke's crest on the carriage. It turns out that inside the carriage were Princess Telestia and the Duke's daughter, Miss Silk. They are very scared by the attack, so Cain uses his magic to calm their hearts. After that, the girls are so delighted with Cain that they ask him to go with them in the carriage to the capital, and although he doesn't want to, they take him with them anyway. Later, they arrive at a town to rest and Telestia and Silk do not want to be separated from Cain, while he wants to escape from them. The girls make the excuse that he is the most powerful of all and must protect them, and unfortunately for Cain, his father reluctantly accepts and warns him to behave properly. Cain will only accept if the room is huge and his bed is very far from the girls, but his request is not fulfilled and the room is small with 3 beds lined up next to each other. The girls take advantage of the situation and put the beds together, making Cain sleep in the middle, but the boy didn't sleep a wink the entire night, nor the ones that followed. A week later, they arrive at the royal palace and are greeted by Dame, the vice captain of the Royal Chivalric Order. He thanks Cain for saving the girls and bringing back the fallen knights in battle and tells him that the king is waiting for him for an audience, which scares Cain. He enters the king's room where a crowd listens to his sovereign, who says that for his bravery in having defeated an army of orcs and having saved Telestia and Silk, he will name him Baron, give him 10 platinum coins and a mansion of his own. Suddenly, a nobleman, Callan Corgino, complains about the reward that will be given to Cain, but the king silences him, because although he is a 10-year-old boy, he has proven more valuable than many. After that, the king and the duke have a meeting with Cain and his father, and they both thank Cain for saving their daughters. But not only that, they want Cain to take Telestia and Silk as his fiancées, saying that he slept in the same room as them. But all this is an excuse, since the royal advisor Magne advised them that the best thing for the kingdom was to keep Cain. Cain finds himself cornered and has no choice but to accept the engagement. Days later, Cain communicates with the gods and they tell him that he is on his way to being one of the most powerful humans in this world and could even be a demigod, but he must still be careful of his limits, and before dismissing him, they give him the idea that he can bring inventions from Earth to this world for entertainment. After that, Cain accompanies Reen to try on her clothes but quickly gets bored and runs away, running into Parma, Reen's friend who he saved a few years ago. She introduces him to her uncle Timanus, who owns a creation store, and Cain gets the idea to ask him to create the Reversa game and give him a gold coin as an investment. The next day, Timanus shows him the Reversa board made of wood, and Cain is satisfied with the result and tells him that now he can make a luxurious version to sell to the rich and a normal version for others, so everyone will be able to play it. Timanus thinks it's a great idea, but the cost would be too much, so Cain gives him more gold coins to start the production of Reversa, and Timanus says that they should make a contract with Panem, the god of commerce. The two put the Reversa board on an altar, and Timanus uses a book to invoke Panem, making the Reversi disappear. In this way, only they will be able to produce and sell the Reversi for 3 years since they have Panem's blessing. Before leaving, Cain asks Timanus to make him an extravagant reverse board to give as an offering to the king. The next day, it's Cain's debut, and his father advises him to keep his guard up. In the ceremony hall, they meet the Duke and Silk, and they all pretend that they just met since their meeting last time was private. As Cain is used to praising Reen to make her happy, he praises Silk's dress, making her fall even more in love with him. After that, Cain and his family pay their respects to the king, and Cain does the same as before. He praises Telestia's dress, causing the girl to ascend to heaven for the compliment. Then Cain presents the reverse board to the king, and he tells him that he would like to know more about this game later. Afterwards, Cain is caught up by Silk, but they are interrupted by some noble children, sons of the Marquis Corgino and 2 other sons of a Viscount. They are jealous because Silk only has eyes for Cain and complain that he didn't greet them properly. The argument gets out of control and they prefer to take it outside. The noble boys take out their magic book and summon a small ball of fire and some small stone, which only amuses Cain but exasperates Silk, who tells them to give Cain respect because he is a baron. Immediately the boys bow to Cain, apologize, and run away. Cain tells Silk that they should keep this a secret, and she in return asks him for a date, but this is overheard by Telestia, who also wants a date, and in the face of so much insistence, Cain reluctantly accepts, but unfortunately, this is overheard by the king. Days later, Magna gives the key and map to his new mansion to Cain, but before leaving, he and the Duke challenge Cain to a game of Reversi, as the game has become very popular in the kingdom. After that, Cain goes to check out his new mansion, and it is old and abandoned, but with the help of his magic, he cleans it and remodels it, and now looks like a luxury mansion. At that moment, Sylvia and Colin, the butler, arrive to help Cain take charge of his new home while he goes to his father's mansion, since his brothers Jin and Alec will come to visit. At home, his brothers tell Cain that they are proud to be their brothers and ask him what condition the mansion is in, but that is not a problem since Cain converted it into a mansion worthy of a nobleman. His father agrees that the mansion is appropriate but tells him that it lacks art paintings to decorate the walls. Suddenly, the maids scream in fear when they see the carcass of a red dragon in one of the rooms, and Cain explains to his father that he defeated it a long time ago and decided to keep it here in Garm. Surprised, tells him that this dragon is worth many platinum coins but are interrupted by other screams. It turns out that Sarah and Reen discovered Cain's magical toilet. It throws water out, and after Garm tries it, he asks her to install one in his mansion too. Before leaving, his father tells Scene that he must officiate a debut party at the mansion because it is his duty, and that only exasperates Cain because he knows nothing about parties, but Sylvia and Colin help him. Colin writes him the guest list, and Cain is surprised not to see the king, and Colin says that only high-ranking nobles can invite the king, and Sylvia makes a list of what they need, from the food to the gifts that he must give to the guests. The days go by, and Cain decides to make shiny porcelain flutes for each guest and tells the chef how to make steak burgers and sparkling for dinner. Suddenly, Cain receives a summons from the king, and since he already imagines what the king wants to talk about, he goes prepared. The king is outraged that only Magna and the Duke have received an invitation, and Cain excuses himself by saying that he wanted to give the invitation to his party personally, and that's why he brought him one, which makes the king happy. Days later, the night of the party finally arrives, and it is a complete success thanks to the sparkling and the shining glasses. Suddenly, the king and his family appear, leaving everyone surprised, but soon he will be the one surprised as he tries the sparkling and the steak burger. And not only is he pleased, the queen is delighted with Cain's toilet and asks for one for the palace, to which the king agrees. Then the king decides to congratulate Cain for his ultimate hospitality, and all the guests applaud, making Cain feel proud. At that moment, Colin tells Cain that Corgino has arrived, and since he doesn't like Cain, he behaves as rudely as he can, pretending that he doesn't like the food or drink at the party, so Cain prepares a trap for him so that he can be heard by the king. He scolds him and tells Corgino that it is a lack of respect for a Marquis to arrive after the king and warns him that he must behave better or he will be erased from his guest list forever. Silk realized that everything was Cain's setup and congratulates him. But the king also realized it, so he reminds Cain that he is the king, which makes Cain tremble, since after all, he is only 10 years old. Days later, Cain goes to the royal palace to leave the monsters he has defeated, and Dame shows him a storage room where he can keep them, but Cain says that it is very small. Then Dame asks him to take all of his monsters out of his item box in the courtyard, and then the knights will put them away somewhere else, but what Dame did not expect is that Cain had defeated monsters that not even A-rank adventurers can. So he decides to take him to see the captain of the knights, and not only that, he wants Cain to show him what he can do with the sword. Dame gathers the battalion of knights and first asks one to confront Cain, and when he easily defeats the knight, he asks the entire platoon to attack Cain. Suddenly, a woman stops the duel. She is Captain Tijuana, and she can't believe that Dame was about to let the entire platoon attack a little boy, but Dame explains that Cain is the hero who defeated 30 orcs and saved the princess. Then the captain decides to confront Cain, and although he only has a wooden sword, he gives the captain a run for her money and manages to defeat her after a few minutes of arduous combat. The The captain is delighted with Kane and tells him that she wants to marry him, and he reminds her that he is only 10 years old, so that is not possible. But Tijuana tells him that she is an elf and will live for more than 300 years, so age is not a problem. She then requests an audience with the king and takes Kane against his will to make their engagement official. The king is surprised by Tijuana's requests and explains to Kane that she is not just any elf, she is basically the princess of her race. In the past, before King Yuyuo ruled, the elves were discriminated against and enslaved. So the King Yuyuo took their territory under his protection and fostered friendship between races. The king understands Tijuana's feelings but confesses to her that Kane is already engaged to Telestia and Silk, but that only makes Tijuana love him more, so the king tells her that she must first consult her father, and Tijuana leaves with Kane to write that letter. Alone, Dame tells them that Kane defeated Tijuana, and he suspects that Kane is an ally of God since he seems to be the strongest human being in the kingdom, and Magne says that they should show Kane something and see how he reacts. Days later, Kane is tired of training with Tijuana, and not only that, Dame takes him to an audience with the king, who shows him a book written by King Yuyuo. Kane begins to read the magic book eagerly and realizes that it has very advanced magic, and the king tells him that the book is written in a language that they do not know, and Kane later realizes that he is reading Japanese and deduces that King Yuyuo also reincarnated in this world. The king gets serious and asks him who he really is, and Kane has no choice but to confess that he has the memories of a past life and comes from a nation called Japan, and the 7 gods have blessed him with their protection. That leaves them speechless, and Kane shows them his true status, leaving them frozen when they read his magic levels, and his status shows that he is the chosen one reincarnated by gods. The king says that Ishirin is chosen of the gods, but Kane fervently says that he does not want to be treated differently. In his old life he had nothing, and now he has a family that loves him, a prosperous future, and is even a baron. This moves the king, and he allows her to continue treating him like Kane. But everything is interrupted by Tijuana, who comes running with her father's letter. He has given permission for her to marry Kane, so the king will give his permission too. After that, they leave, and the duke tells the king that Kane will always be Kane and he has no desire to reign. 2 years later, Kane tries to read Yude's book, but is bothered by Telestia, Silk, and Tijuana. The 3 want to spend time with him, but he has more important things to do. He is finally 12 years old and can now register at the Adventurers Guild. The next day, Kane goes to the guild, and the receptionist Ricia tells him where to put his to register and gives him a G rank card like all starters. At that moment, some adventurers start asking Ricia on a date, but fortunately, a guy named Claude scares them away. He buys Kane a fruit juice and tells him that he has a party with his wife, and his card is gold because he is a rank. For Kane, that is wonderful, but Claude says that the old King Yue used to be SSS rank and his card was black. Then the talk is interrupted by Claude's wife, who takes him by the ear. After that, Kane chooses his first mission as a G rank to catch some goblins that are causing problems in the forests, but when leaving the guild, he runs into Tijuana, who does not plan to miss Kane's first mission as an adventurer, so she forces him to accept her company. In the forest, Tijuana defeats the goblins, but it turns out that there were more of them, so Kane gives her a power boost using his magic, and she feels that she is fighting alongside his beloved fiancé. Suddenly, the mission goes up a notch when some giant lizards appear, and this time it is Kane who defeats them alone, even though there were more than 30 of them. Later, Kane returns to the guild and tells Ricia about his feat, and she is surprised because giant lizards are for D-rank adventurers. So she goes to talk to Cedric, the guild master's assistant, about Kane, and he asks her to bring him to talk to him. Unfortunately for Kane, Cedric does not believe his story and thinks that he is cheating and only wants to make money and to revoke his adventurer's card if he does not tell him the truth. The whole discussion alerts the guild master, who shows up to see what's going on and asks Kane his side of the story, but he doesn't even answer because Tijuana enters the room, and Kane realizes that the guild mater knows everything about him since he is Tijuana's brother. Cedric can't believe that a 12-year-old boy is so powerful, and not only that, but a baron, that the guild master surprises them further by saying that having defeated the 30 lizards, Kane will be promoted to rank C. But Tijuana complains because Kane is already capable of defeating dragons. So the guild master reconsiders his decision and promotes him to a rank and gives him a gold card. Meanwhile, on another plane, the gods watch Kane with amusement, wishing that he would become stronger since soon Aaron will break his seal and be freed, and only Kane would be able to face him. Days later, Sylvia rushes into Kane's room to wake him up since today is his academy entrance exams. First, Kane takes his written exam and finishes it in half an hour, even though he had 2 hours to do it. Then they will be tested in magic, and he asks if he can use all of his power, and the teacher says that the academy is surrounded by a protective barrier, so it is allowed. Kane observes his future classmates and sees that their magic is very weak, so he decides to reduce his to the level of beginners. But when it is his turn, and he launches a fire at the target. It goes through the academy, its barrier, and advances through the forest, leaving the teacher stunned. At the end, Cain must take the sword skills exam, and they have brought A-rank adventurers for that, so Cain is surprised to see Claude, who chooses him to take the exam. Claude does not hold back and attacks him with everything just like Cain, and the fight is so epic that the teacher asks them to stop because there are scared children. After that, Cain returns home and anxiously awaits the results, but instead is called to an audience with the king. He asks why he took the exam with the commoner children, and Cain finally realizes why he didn't see Telestia and Silk on the exam because he took the wrong entrance in the morning. Fortunately, this will not affect his grades, but he must be more careful, and the king must pay for the damage he did. The next day, Cain goes to the academy and sees that he has gotten the best grades in his class and is named the top student, and according to Rein, he must give a speech on the day the school starts. Days later, Cain meets Telestia and Silk and sits with them in the academy's ceremony room where he must give a speech, causing envy among his classmates. Then Cain gives his speech saying that he wants to be like Yuya, a man who makes no distinction between races and asks everyone to treat him like any other student. Suddenly, the king makes a surprise appearance and also gives a speech welcoming the new students, emphasizing to Cain that he be more careful. The next day, the students start school, and the first thing they must do is choose their courses, and Cain chooses nobility, adventuring, magic, and magical items, while Telestia chooses nobility and internal affairs because in the future she must help Cain, just like Silk that chooses nobility and commerce thinking about the future. At recess, Cain sees that some noble boys are bothering Parma, and he and his girls intervene, forcing them to apologize, and while the girls become friends, Cain hears a voice in his head asking him to go to the library. But when Cain opens the library doors, he is transported to another place and meets a guy who knows he is Shina Kazuya. It turns out that he is Yuya, and this world is Fabnail, and he is its god. He communicates with Cain because Aaron's about to be resurrected and only Cain can face him. This was a villain that he managed to seal 300 years ago. So Cain asks why he doesn't seal him back, and Yuya says that he cannot intervene in the problems of other worlds because he is the god of Fabnail. So the gods asked him to train Cain, and now he must level up from 300 to 600 if he is to have a chance of defeating Aaron. Then Yuya teleports Cain to a beach and tells him that he must climb the mountain facing all the monsters that he encounters, and he does not have to worry about time since a year in Fabnail is equivalent to a day in the other world. Cain is ready and excited about this challenge and begins to face the monsters, but months pass and he does not seem to make any progress. Meanwhile, in the other world, Telestia and Silk go to Cain's mansion worried because they have not seen him since yesterday, and Sylvia tells them crying that yesterday he did not return from school and fears that a tragedy has happened. But Telestia says that she trusts the Cain's abilities and will wait for his return at the house. Returning to Fabnail, Cain is exhausted after so much fighting and listens to a wounded Fenrir and heals it with the last magic he has left, and then while he is unconscious, the Fenrir takes care of him from the monsters, and the two become friends, and the white Fenrir is named Haku. For 4 years, Cain and Haku face all kinds of monsters, and finally one day, Cain reaches the top of the mountain to Yuya's house. He congratulates him for completing the first phase of his training and tells him that he must make a contract with Haku so he can summon him whenever he wants in his world. Once the contract is made, Haku disappears and Yuya calls a new teacher for Cain. His name is Doraemon. But before they start, Yuya says that he will tell him a little about Aaron and his past life. After that, Cain and Doraemon begin their combat training. Doraemon is a strong guy who does not hold back and knocks out Cain several times. Luckily, while his training lasts, Cain will live in Doraemon's house where his wife cooks delicious food, making Cain cry with happiness because he hasn't eaten home-cooked food in 4 years. And on top of it all, there is a little dragon, who quickly becomes attached to Cain. Meanwhile, at Cain's mansion, Sylvia trains Telestia and Silk in the art of making Cain's favorite cookies, since they have to know how to make him happy. Returning to Fabnail, Cain and Doraemon continue training for a year, and every time he wants to give up, he remembers what Yuya told him. It turns out that Aaron was the 8th god, the god of amusement, but he used his powers to make the world engage in a game of just for fun, until Yuya sealed him along with his 2 best friends, who turned out to be the Cain's parents. The 3 of them had been teleported to this world to defeat Aaron, but they perished in the final battle, and their last thought was for Cain. Thinking about his parents, Cain gains strength and finally manages to defeat Doraemon and runs to Yuya's house and finds him in the yard next to the tombstones of his friends that are Cain's parents. He says that he is ready to return, and Yuya returns him to his original size since it would cause many questions to see him older. Before leaving, Doraemon gives him the small dragon, and Yuya gives him a sword and a letter to give to the current king. When Cain returns to his mansion, he finds Telestia and Silk there, who were waiting for him with trays of cookies, making him very happy. The next day, Kane goes to talk to the king and gives him the letter and Yuia's sword, and the king is very surprised to know that Kane was training with Yuia all this time, although that will not prevent him from being removed from his rank. The Duke tells him that he has to go to the guild as quickly as possible to pick up a quest, or his golden card will be revoked. At the guild, Kane is given a mission where he must help some adventurers, who were being bodyguards for beast folk, but some road raiders outnumbered them and they asked for help. Kane accepts the mission and uses his magic to reach the place in seconds, being surprised when he meets Nana and Millie, his former tutors. As expected, Kane quickly defeats the highwaymen, tying them up and putting them away. Nina and Millie can't believe that their former disciple is already an A-rank adventurer, although they always knew that he was an amazing adventurer because how powerful he was when he was 5 years old. After that, they go to the guild to hand over the evildoers and meet some rude adventurers who want to ask Millie and Nina on a date, but Kane and Claude scare them away. It turns out that Claude is Millie's older brother, and they all sit down to drink to celebrate the mission accomplished, although Claude soon learns that Kane is now an A-rank adventurer with only 5 days as an adventurer. And not only that, Millie and Nina tell Claude and his wife that it was Kane who created their magic bags a few years ago that catches Lena's attention, and she manages to convince Kane to make one for her. After that, Kane goes home since he has school tomorrow and can't keep missing classes, and Claude and the girls decide to pay him a visit tomorrow, since the academy requested an adventurer to teach a class. The next day, Kane is disappointed when his homeroom teacher informs him that he cannot practice magic with the other students because his level is too advanced. Later, Claude and the girls arrive at the academy to teach their class, and Kane is happy to learn that his former tutors Millie and Nina are now B-rank adventurers. Claude tries to make Kane stand out, so he asks all the students to take out his G-rank cards, but Kane refuses to take out his gold card because unlike Claude, he doesn't want to stand out. After that, the adventurers take the students to the courtyard and decide to leave Kane last since they want to show how strong they are and then fight with Kane. But the training hour ended soon and Kane couldn't battle with Claude. At night, Kane throws a tantrum in the middle of the monster forest, angry at Claude because he left him waiting in the entire class, and his attacks are so powerful that they alert Garm's army, but when they arrive, they only see craters in Kane's handkerchief. The next day, the king calls to scold Kane for his tantrum, while in the depths of a cave a dragon stretches, the seal becoming increasingly weaker. Days later, Grat, an instructor of summoning creatures, arrives at the academy to give a special class and asks for the students to use all their magic without holding back, and that is what Kane does. The problem is that he summons Sith, the demon prince of darkness. He swears to serve Kane and tells him that when he wants to destroy a city, he must call him, although Kane assures him that will never happen. To Kane's bad luck, Grat tells the king about what happened at the academy, and the king calls Kane to a hearing and demands that he tell him about Seth. An embarrassed Kane tells him that he made a contract with the Prince of Darkness, and Grat points out that this is only possible if Kane had a huge amount of magic, and everyone asks Kane to show his current status. And when he does, everyone is shocked to see his demigod status, and his power is so colossal that it cannot be measured. Then the king says that he cannot continue being a baron. He must be promoted to Viscount, and he will be given a town that he must take charge of, since he cannot take charge of a nation without having a town first. Later, at his mansion, Kane is informed that there has been trouble on the borders of the monster forest near Garm's domain, so Kane immediately goes to talk to his brother, who fills him in on the situation. He tells him that there has been an outbreak of monsters that attack adventurers incessantly, and Kane offers to go to the guild to find out information about monsters before doing anything, and although his brother worries about him, Kane tells him that he is already an A-rank adventurer. When he arrives at the guild, Rudy tells him that the situation is very critical, and they have asked the closest guild for help. At this moment, Millie and Nina arrive and tell him that Claude and Lena are on their way. Everyone has come to help, but Kane decides to go to the monster forest on his own and assures the girls that he has someone to accompany him. In the forest, he summons Haku, his Fenrir, and Jin, his little dragon. Between the three of them, they defeat several monsters, although Kane feels that someone is watching him, so he summons Seth. The Prince of Darkness tells him that he can sense many high-level monsters awakening and will soon invade the town, so Kane asks him to investigate what is happening. Seth tells him that he has his servant specialized in searching for information, his butler Dalmatia. Then Kane begins to defeat hundreds of A-rank and S-rank monsters, while Dalmatia invokes his dark powers to find out what he is causing the outbreak of so many monsters. After that, Kane teleports to the guild with all his defeated monsters and updates Claude, Lena, and the girls about the monster forest. On the other hand, Dalmatia discovers that the evil forces that are awakening the monsters come from a cave, and not only that, the attack has begun. Hundreds of monsters are going to start coming out of the forest right now. So Dalmatia and Seth teleport to the guild and give the terrible news to Cain, who takes charge of the situation and intrudes on everyone how they should protect the town. At that moment, Tijuana arrives, and although she wants to accompany Cain to face the monsters, he asks her to protect his house. Meanwhile, deep in a cave, Aaron finally wakes up inside a dragon. While Cain goes looking for Aaron, Seth summons his 4 kings and asks them to help him defeat the horde of monsters, and they obey. On the other hand, Claude, Lena, Millie, and Nina decide to go to the forest to help Cain, and they find the 4 kings of darkness fighting, so they join them and a fierce battle begins. Elsewhere, Cain finally locates Aaron in dragon form and summons Haku and Jin. The 3 of them face the dragon, but he is very strong and manages to knock out the Fenrir and the dragon. Then Cain stands between Aaron and his friends and invokes all the power he has and asks his parents to help him defeat Aaron once again. Cain's bursts of power are so powerful and so bright that they light up the sky. It is as if a god has descended into the forest. Suddenly, Seth stops him and tells him that it's all over. Aaron is gone and the monsters disappeared, making Cain extremely happy, since what he wanted most was to be able to protect everyone he loves. The next day, Cain is received by the king, who tells him that the people who saw the Hellas of Light think that a god appeared, and Cain confesses that he was the culprit since he used emperor-rank magic, and that surpasses the king. He is ready to retire, but Magna reminds him that it is not time yet. Then the king decides to give Cain his own domain, thinking about the future of him in Telestia. The problem is that the king gives him the domain of Dorinthal. This place has such a bad reputation that Telestia wants to go complain to her father, but Cain tells her that this is the right place for him since he can mold him to his liking. As soon as Cain arrives to Dorinthal, he reforms the guild, the police, and the church, since the bad adventurers had taken the place and believed themselves to be owners of the place. But they were ants compared to Cain's power. Time after, Cain and his girls receive a visit from Seth and his wife Lefan. She complains that he was unfaithful to her, and Cain scolds him, and obviously the girls take Lefan's side and warn Cain to never behave like Seth. So Lefan decides to forgive Seth and gives Cain a warning: never hurt girls' hearts. Sometime later, Cain decides to build a castle in Dorinthal. Since a domain needs a castle, the only problem is that he is so powerful that the castle he creates is bigger and more majestic than the castle of the king himself, causing everyone to scold him as always.